Imagine waking up one day and realizing you've been living someone else's life. The job you go to every morning, the way you dress, the words you say, even the beliefs you defend with so much conviction, none of them originated from you. They were given to you, piece, by voices you can no longer name, parents, teachers, advertisements, religion, society. Expectations layered upon expectations until your true self was buried like a city swallowed by ash. And here's the terrifying part. You didn't notice it happening. You thought this was just who you are. But something stirs, a faint, persistent ache, like the sensation of a phantom limb, a feeling that something essential is missing, not outside of you, but within. You walk past mirrors and catch yourself staring too long, wondering who it is that looks back. There's a hollowness behind your eyes, a rehearsed smile on your face, a script you've memorized but don't understand. You perform life competently, even successfully, but secretly you feel like a well-dressed imposter, navigating a world built for people who actually belong. Have you ever wondered where you went? Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But what if you've lived 3 decades, 4 decades, maybe more, and you've never even met that person? What if you've only been an echo, bouncing off the walls of culture, a mosaic of borrowed fragments, stitched together and mistaken for a self?" Here lies the paradox. From the outside, everything seems fine. You have what people call a life, a job, a routine, a personality. But deep down, you carry an unnamed grief. The grief of not having lived authentically, not having spoken your true voice, not having danced your own rhythm. And worse, you fear it might be too late. You scroll through social media, see pictures of people who seem to be living fully, backpacking through Peru, opening minimalist art galleries, starting families, or abandoning everything to live on a sailboat. They claim to have found themselves, and you want to believe it's real. But a darker thought gnaws at you. What if no one truly knows who they are? What if everyone's pretending just as you are, waiting for someone else to call them real? What does it mean to find yourself? Is it a luxury reserved for monks on mountaintops and artists in Parisian cafes? Or is it something more primitive, more urgent, something each of us was born to do, but most of us forget? What if the self isn't found in books or philosophies or travel or silence, but hidden like a wounded animal, shivering in the dark corners of your soul, waiting for you to finally stop pretending? Now imagine this. You're standing in the middle of a crowded street. People rush past you, their faces lit by screens, minds spinning in loops of obligation and distraction. But you stop. You close your eyes, and in that stillness something ancient stirs within you. Not a thought, but a recognition. A whisper. A pulse. A memory of who you were before the world told you who to be. It doesn't speak in words. It feels like something breaking loose, like chains slipping from your wrists, like breath-filling lungs that were half empty for years. But here's the twist. That feeling, it terrifies you. Because to truly find yourself means everything you've built may have been constructed on lies, that the career you pursued, the relationships you formed, the reputation you protected, they might not have been yours to begin with. And if you allow the real self to emerge, what will collapse in its place? Will you lose everything, or will you finally begin to live? Carl Jung believed the self is not something we create, but something we must uncover. Like a statue hidden within a block of marble, it waits to be revealed through the painful chiseling of illusion. But few dare pick up the chisel. Few dare question the mask they've worn their entire lives. Because the truth is unbearable until it becomes the only thing that can set you free. So let me ask you this. Who are you when no one's watching? Who are you beneath your name, your achievements, your roles? Have you met that person? Do they exist? And if they do, what would happen if they finally woke up? You were told to find yourself by looking outward. Go to college. Find a good job. Get married. Be productive. Fit in. But what if the path to the self isn't paved with milestones, but minefields? From an early age you were molded, not maliciously but systematically. Your identity, fragile and unformed, was a soft wax imprinted by every expectation you encountered. Parents needed you to behave. Teachers needed you to conform. Society needed you to function. In the process, your ego, that fragile, constructed I was, built not from your deepest truths, but from the demands of survival. Carl Jung called this the persona, the mask you wear to navigate the world. It's not inherently evil. In fact, it serves a vital purpose. The persona helps you play your part in society. But the danger comes when you mistake the mask for your face, when you forget that beneath it lies a deeper, unacknowledged self, the true self, buried and mute. And the more competent you become at playing your role, the further that true self drifts from your awareness. Jung warned, "The world will ask you who you are, and if you do not know, the world will tell you. But the world does not care for your soul. It cares for your utility, your productivity, your obedience." And so, unknowingly, you traded authenticity for acceptance. It starts small. You laugh when you're supposed to. You suppress anger because it's ugly. You pursue careers that promise stability, not meaning. You surround yourself with people who reflect who you think you should be, not who you are. Over time, the real self becomes a ghost in your life, haunting you in the form of anxiety, depression, numbness. Not loud enough to scream, but persistent, like a soft knocking you try to ignore. And then there's the shadow. Jung's most harrowing contribution to psychology was the idea that the parts of ourselves we disown do not disappear, they fester. Everything you repress, rage, desire, fear, insecurity, potential, goes underground, into the unconscious, into the shadow. But here's the twist. The shadow isn't only filled with darkness, it also holds your creativity, your power, your buried dreams, everything you abandoned to be acceptable. You didn't just suppress your flaws, you suppressed your brilliance. Why? Because somewhere deep inside, you learned it was safer to be small than to be rejected. This is not a personal failing. It is an ancient survival strategy. The child who fits in survives. The tribe rewards conformity, not authenticity. And so, in a world of mirrors and masks, you became who others needed you to be. But in doing so, you lost the ability to hear your own voice. Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." But how do you find your why if you've never truly known your who? Modern psychology tells us that meaning and identity are not found in the external world, but in alignment with one's internal truth. Yet we live in a culture that shames introspection and glorifies performance. Self-awareness is considered indulgent. Stillness is viewed as laziness. And so we rush from one distraction to the next. Scrolling, working, consuming, hoping that doing more will quiet the ache of being less. The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre wrote that man is condemned to be free, that freedom is not liberation, it is burden. You are not given a script, you must write it. And in that terrifying responsibility, many people choose the comfort of roles over the chaos of authenticity. They prefer a known lie to an unknown truth. But here's where things become even more twisted. The more you ignore the call of the self, the louder it screams, not through words, but symptoms, panic attacks, existential dread, dreams that disturb you, a midlife crisis that crashes down not because you are broken, but because your soul refuses to be silent any longer. It's not a malfunction, it's a message. Aldous Huxley once observed that most human beings live lives of quiet desperation. But what he didn't say is this, that desperation begs for awakening. Beneath your suffering lies a yearning for wholeness, for integration. And wholeness can only be achieved by confronting what you've buried. This is where Jung's idea of individuation enters, the process of becoming your full self by integrating the unconscious into consciousness. It is not a path of comfort. It is a descent into chaos, a confrontation with everything you have denied. But it is also the only path to freedom. Individuation demands that you stop blaming others and face your own shadow, that you stop outsourcing your worth to external validation and start listening to the quiet voice within, that you learn to differentiate between the voice of the world and the whisper of the soul. Viktor Frankl, a man who endured the unspeakable horrors of the Holocaust, wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." But most people never reach this moment of reckoning. They live and die in the safety of the mask, never knowing they were born to be more. So ask yourself, who would you be if you stripped away everything that wasn't truly you? What would remain? Not your job, not your image, not your curated identity, just you, the raw, unfiltered, trembling you. Would you recognize that person? Or have they become a stranger? The truth is painful, but it is also sacred, because only through the unraveling of illusion can something real begin to take shape. Something terrifying, something beautiful, something yours. You don't notice the chains until you try to move. That's the cruel trick of psychological conditioning. It's invisibility. You walk through life believing you are free, making choices, chasing dreams, forming relationships. But all the while, the architecture of your mind has been shaped by unseen hands. And the deeper tragedy? Most people never realize it. They just feel tired. Not physically, but existentially. A soul-level exhaustion that no amount of rest can cure. Because they're not tired from working too much. They're tired from being someone they're not. This is the quiet apocalypse Jung warned us about. Not a collapse of cities or nations, but of selves. A slow erosion of inner truth, until what remains is a shell, polished on the outside, hollow within. And yet, it's so subtle. You go to work, you smile in meetings, you post happy photos, you say the right things. But in the quiet moments, when the noise fades and you're left alone with yourself, you feel it. That something is off. Like wearing shoes that almost fit. Like walking through a dream that doesn't quite make sense. Life becomes a performance, and you're not sure who the audience is anymore. This is the consequence of living a life that is not yours. You become an actor playing a role that wins applause but starves the soul. Cognitive dissonance, the psychological discomfort we feel when our actions contradict our beliefs, isn't just a fleeting annoyance. It's a signal, a warning siren. Yet in modern society it's so common we mistake it for normalcy. We medicate it, numb it, justify it. But over time it metastasizes. You start to feel anxious without knowing why. Relationships feel empty, but you blame the other person. Achievements feel hollow, but you chase more. The shadow rears its head in dreams, in outbursts, in quiet breakdowns behind closed doors. The unconscious doesn't forget what you've buried. The cost of ignoring your true self is not just internal, it's relational. When you live behind a mask, you can't truly connect with others. You only form attachments between masks, two personas orbiting one another in a dance of mutual pretense. Real intimacy requires vulnerability, and vulnerability is impossible when you don't even know who you are, so your relationships become transactional, strategic, fragile. Worse still, you pass it on. Children learn not from what you say, but from who you are, and if they see you hiding, suppressing, performing, they will learn to do the same. Thus, the cycle continues. Generation after generation of souls taught to survive, not to live. Look around, and you'll see the fingerprints of this epidemic everywhere. We are a society drowning in distraction. Social media isn't just entertainment, it's escape. A mirror distorted by filters where people display the version of themselves they think will be loved, but no one feels truly seen. And so, loneliness deepens. We chase productivity like salvation. The busier we are, the less we have to feel. But the soul doesn't care for spreadsheets. It yearns for truth. And when truth is denied, suffering follows. A quiet, gnawing pain that no promotion or purchase can soothe. And the irony? We call this progress. We live in an age of unprecedented convenience, connection and access. But anxiety, depression and suicide are at record highs. The outer world advances, but the inner world withers. We build smarter machines, but forget what it means to be human. Because to be human is not to produce, it is to be. To feel, to suffer, to create, to rebel, to discover, to become. But that becoming requires confrontation, a willingness to face what you've avoided, to stop asking, what do others want from me, and instead ask, what do I want from me? Neuroscience backs what Jung intuited decades ago. The brain is a pattern-detecting, habit-forming machine. It builds neural pathways around repeated behaviors and beliefs. If for years you've acted in ways misaligned with your truth, your brain wires itself to sustain that false self. You become trapped in a neurological prison of your own design. Breaking free feels unnatural, even dangerous. That's why so many people resist change, not because they're lazy, but because their entire identity is built on avoidance. They fear that if they stop running, they'll collapse, that if they tell the truth, they'll be rejected, that if they let go of who they're supposed to be, they'll become nothing at all. But that fear is the gatekeeper to freedom. It is not evidence of failure. It is the sign you're nearing the threshold of transformation. The shadow resists the light, not because it hates it, but because it fears annihilation. But what the shadow doesn't know, what you may not know, is that what dies is the illusion, and what emerges is you. Think about it. How many times have you silenced your intuition to be agreeable? How many dreams have you buried under practicality? How many parts of yourself have you labeled too much, too weird, too risky? How many times have you said yes when your soul screamed no? These are not small compromises, they are the slow suicide of the self. You don't need more motivation, you need revelation. A confrontation with the cost of staying asleep, because the longer you live as someone you're not, the more you suffer, and the more you teach others to do the same. And here's the bitter truth. You will be judged no matter what you do. So why not be judged for being real? Jung once wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." But what he didn't say, what he implied, is that facing the soul is the only thing worth doing, because when you do, the masks fall, the noise fades, and for the first time, you feel alive. Not entertained, not validated, alive. So let me ask again, what is the cost of continuing to live a life that isn't yours? And what would happen if you stopped? Not gradually, not someday, but now, in this moment. Would everything fall apart? Or would everything finally begin? Freedom doesn't begin with escape. It begins with truth. Not the polished truths you post online, not the stories you tell at dinner parties, but the raw, shaking truths that live in your bones, the ones you've swallowed for years, the ones that make your voice tremble when spoken. The rebellion doesn't look like fireworks or revolutions. It looks like this. You wake up one morning and stop pretending. You admit to yourself that you're not okay, that the life you've built feels foreign, that your laughter is often rehearsed, that your achievements feel more like disguises than victories. And then, like a match to dry paper, you whisper the most dangerous words a person can say, and how you can break them. I want something more. This is the beginning, the rupture, the first crack in the mask, and once it starts, you can't go back, because you've glimpsed the truth, that your life doesn't have to be a performance, that you are allowed to be real, that you don't need to earn the right to exist as yourself. But make no mistake, the moment you decide to find yourself, the world will push back. You will be called selfish for saying no. You will be called difficult for setting boundaries. You will be called irrational for leaving what doesn't nourish you. This is because your authenticity threatens the system. The system survives on conformity, on people who keep quiet, stay in line, wear the mask. But the moment one person steps out, it makes others question the script. That's why rebels are often exiled before they are admired. But here's the truth. The self cannot be found in safety. Jung understood this. He didn't offer shortcuts, he offered fire. He taught that the process of individuation, of becoming whole, is a descent before it is a rise, a journey through chaos, not away from it. You must go into the underworld of your psyche. You must meet your shadow, your wounds, your shame, not to destroy them, but to integrate them, because the parts of you you've buried are not your enemies. They are exiled allies waiting to be welcomed home. Imagine sitting in a dark room with the versions of you that were rejected, your younger self who was told to quiet down, your angry self who was never allowed to speak, your creative self who was shamed into silence. What would happen if, instead of pushing them away, you listened? This is not regression. This is resurrection. Rebellion is not rage, it's remembrance. To break free, you must remember who you were before the world told you who to be. That child who danced without music, who asked too many questions, who built universes in their imagination and didn't apologize for it. Find yourself. They are still in you, but they won't come out until you give them permission. Start small, not with grand gestures, but with sacred defiance. Say no to one thing that drains your soul. Say yes to one thing that lights you up, even if it makes no sense. Take a walk without your phone. Sit in silence and ask, what am I not hearing? Then wait. And when the voice comes, not the loud, critical one, but the soft, trembling one, you follow it, even if it leads you away from everything you thought you wanted. Because here's the paradox. The self you're trying to find, it's not out there. It's the one you've been silencing all along. You don't need to invent a new you. You need to unearth the one that's been buried. This rebellion is inward. It's choosing solitude over noise, integrity over image, depth over performance. It's realizing that healing isn't glamorous. Sometimes it looks like crying in your car. Sometimes it means losing people who only loved your mask. Sometimes it means starting over with nothing but your truth. But what you gain is everything. Clarity, alignment, peace that doesn't depend on approval, love that isn't conditional, work that feeds your soul, not your facade, and most of all, a sense of home, not in a place, but in yourself. Look to those who've walked this path before. Nietzsche, who declared, "Become who you are." Frankl, who found meaning in the ashes of horror. Jung, who faced his inner chaos to map the human soul. Artists who created against the current, saints who disobeyed to touch the divine. Even ordinary people. Your friend who left a six-figure job to teach poetry. The woman who left an unloving marriage to rediscover her voice. The man who cried for the first time at 40 and didn't apologize. They are rebels. Not because they destroyed the world, but because they refused to destroy themselves to fit into it. So, what does rebellion look like for you? Maybe it's picking up the brush again. Maybe it's admitting you don't believe what you preach. Maybe it's starting therapy, leaving a church, starting a journal, leaving a job, calling your father and saying, "This hurt me," calling your child and saying, "I'm sorry." Maybe it's looking in the mirror and not flinching for once. This isn't easy, but it's real, and real is where life begins. Jung said, "We cannot change anything until we accept it. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses." This rebellion is not about tearing yourself apart. It's about embracing all you are, even the parts you've feared, because only when you stop running can you begin to become whole. And when you become whole, the world changes. Not because it bends to your will, but because you no longer need it to. You no longer beg it to define you. You walk through life not asking for permission, but bringing presence. So now, stand at the edge of everything false and leap, not away from your life, but into it. At the end of every journey, something must die. Not you, but the version of you that was never real to begin with. The roles, the expectations, the false gods of perfection and productivity. The myth that you had to earn your right to be whole. And in the quiet aftermath, after the chaos of unbecoming, you find yourself standing in front of a mirror, not the glass kind, but the internal one. The kind Carl Jung pointed toward when he said, "Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart." Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. This is awakening. Not the mystical, abstract kind, not lightning bolts or angel choirs, but a deeper, more sacred realization. You were never broken. The pain, the confusion, the wandering, It wasn't failure. It was calling. It was the self trying to surface through the noise. And all this time, you weren't lost. You were becoming. What if the ultimate truth is this? You are not here to find meaning. You are the meaning. Not in your success, not in how many people love you, not in how perfect your life appears from the outside, but in your presence, in your existence, in the simple, undiluted fact that you are here, breathing, feeling, breaking and healing in a world that numbs. You are not a project to be fixed. You are a mystery to be lived. The mistake was thinking the self is a destination, something to be discovered once you do enough inner work, read enough books, heal every wound, become enlightened. But the self is not a fixed point. It is a process, a river, always moving, always unfolding. The ultimate realization is that life doesn't begin when you're perfect. It begins the moment you accept that imperfection is not a flaw, but the doorway to depth. Think of the moments you felt most alive, not when things were easy, but when you were raw, vulnerable, awake to joy and pain in equal measure. That's the pulse of the soul. That's the rhythm of the real. And what if this has been the lesson all along? That the self you've been searching for doesn't reside in the future. It is right here, in this moment, asking to be seen. Not fixed, not judged, just seen. The parts of you that feel too much. The dreams you've shelved for being impractical. The wounds you've hidden, thinking they made you unlovable. The parts of your story that no one claps for. All of it is you. And more than that, all of it is sacred. This is what Jung meant when he said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not a polished image, not a curated brand, but a soul in motion. A human being who dares to live aligned with their truth, even when it costs them everything that is false. Because here's what they never told you. Freedom isn't found in the absence of fear. It's found in choosing truth despite fear. Love isn't found in being perfect. It's found in letting yourself be seen, even in your trembling, unfinished state. And purpose. It's not a job title or a 10-year plan. It's living each moment with integrity. Saying yes to what nourishes you. Saying no to what starves your spirit. Creating, speaking, connecting in ways that make your soul whisper, yes, this is me. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are unfolding exactly as you must. And now, as the noise fades and clarity rises, you are faced with the final question, the one that has waited patiently beneath every other. Will you choose to be yourself, even if it means letting go of everything that isn't? That is the crucible of becoming. Not everyone will understand. Not everyone will stay. But the right people, the real ones, they will see you not as strange, but as familiar. Because when you live from your truth, you give others permission to do the same. This is the quiet revolution. One soul at a time. Waking up. Shedding the mask. Returning to the origin point. And here's where it gets poetic, maybe even divine. What if your soul didn't come here to win? What if it came here simply to remember? To remember its shape, its voice, its fire. To remember that it never needed to justify its existence. To remember that being is enough. You don't need a map. You need a mirror. You don't need answers. You need to feel the question in your body and not flinch. And when the world tries to rush you into decisions, into roles, into boxes, you can simply pause and ask, does this honor who I truly am? That question, asked sincerely, is an act of rebellion. It is an act of self-love. It is how you stay awake in a world that seduces you into sleep. And when you forget, because you will forget, return. Return to your breath. Return to your stillness. Return to the trembling voice within that still believes in you. That is the self. Not a fixed identity, but a flame. Nurtured not by performance, but by presence. And as you learn to live from that flame, you discover something else. You were never meant to find yourself. You were meant to become yourself. And that becoming, that's where life truly begins.